regular monthly meeting of the Eureka Planning Commission. If we can begin, Ms. Jessica, with a roll call.
Commissioner Ames? Here. Commissioner Reagan?
I'm here.
And Commissioner Mayer? Here. Thank you.
Where are the other guys? Let's out them by name. Joe Benino's not here, and Tiana Arriaga is not here. All right, next item on the agenda is our salute to the flag. Would you stand and join us as Meredith Meyer has volunteered to lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes for our January meeting. I don't think we can approve that, though, because she was not here and I was not here. He was, but one vote is not enough to approve it. So
you can choose to approve it if you're comfortable with Commissioner Ames' recollection of the meeting.
I don't know. He's getting older. His memory might be slipping. Let's wait until we've got a couple other folks here. Did I say that out loud? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that.
Could we get a motion to table to the next meeting then, please?
Yep. Let's,
He was sort of saying that one person that shows up all the time.
could you turn your mic on and speak into that so we can get your comments on the record, please? Okay.
I can make a motion to table the approval of minutes.
I second that motion. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The motion passes unanimously. Next item on our agenda is oral communication. So this section of the meeting, so the Brown Act says that we cannot act on anything that's not on the agenda. So if you have an item on the agenda and you want to talk to us about that, then when that item comes up, you'll have an opportunity for the public hearing. This part of the meeting is if you want to talk to us about anything that's not on the agenda. Any takers? Once, twice, closed. Next item on our agenda is a public hearing. So if we can begin with a staff report for EcoCan conditional use permit. I think that's you, right, Rob?
Yes, it is. I'll be pinch hitting for Caitlin Castellano. She is out sick. So this evening we're talking about it's actually a modification of a use permit. So EcoCan already has a use permit. We're just looking to add additional uses related to cannabis retail to it. So just for a refresher as to where EcoCan is located, here we are. We're kind of on that edge between Old Town and downtown. This is the actual building in which they're situated. And then from the street view, so here's where they currently operate, and here's where they're looking to expand into with an on-site consumption use. So the project description, we're looking at a modification of their existing use permit to allow on-site cannabis retail uses. So this can include topicals, edibles, and smoking. Retail activities would continue to take place in 306 F Street and expand into that neighboring 300 F Street like I just showed you in the last slide. And a commercial cannabis license modification that is being considered separately by our cannabis review panel. So like I mentioned, the applicant currently holds a valid City of Eureka commercial cannabis license for retail. It's conditionally permitted. And it's notable EcoCan was the first cannabis retailer to be granted a use permit and license by the City of Eureka, so they're our oldest operating dispensary. And then the applicant was invited to apply for a retail cannabis license modification to include on-site consumption by the City Council. So if you'll remember in 2019, we did an RFP for anyone that either wanted to start something new or add on-site consumption to an existing program. So they were invited in phase one. They scored top of everyone who applied. In regards to zoning, this is in our downtown commercial zone district. And this is kind of in a transitional area between downtown and the commercial and waterfront zone districts. So in regards to findings, your staff report has very detailed findings, but the basics is that we find the use is compatible with surrounding uses. It's consistent with the existing plans adopted by the city. It meets our development standards and is not a threat to public health or safety. We have a few notable conditions of approval that are different than what you might see in some of our other cannabis licensees. So this one, we have one that the operation will comply with the state's regulation on operating hours. When this came through the first time, I don't believe the state had set hours just yet, so the Planning Commission did. And there's slightly shorter than what the state allows. We haven't put a time condition on anyone else at this point in time, so we would let that default to the state's time as opposed to having to set our own.
So what are the state's time?
The state allows you to be open until 10 o'clock at night. EcoCan is currently allowed to stay open until 9. And then the operation must comply with requirements contained in our on-site cannabis consumption policy. The full document was attached to your packets, but kind of the highlights from that is it requires the applicant to have employee and customer education about products and dosing. It requires them to provide information on safe transportation of folks who are there for on-site consumption purposes. And it includes building and filtration standards to be reviewed and approved by the chief building official. And that part's actually underway right now. They've submitted building permit packet with full HVAC system and whatnot that's been routed to our building official for review. And so with that, the staff recommendation is to approve with conditions the modification of the use permit. I've provided a sample motion if you care to use it. I'm available for any questions, and the applicant is also here in the audience if you wish to speak to him.
Great. Excellent. So any questions for staff on this particular proposal before we open up a public hearing? I'm always curious. I think this has been explained to me before, but I'm not sure. What's the difference between regulations regarding cannabis smoke and tobacco smoke? Being as how I'm a cigar smoker, sometimes I feel discriminated against. What's the difference?
So at a city level, smoke is smoke, for what it's worth. But we have carved out a specific cannabis smoking reg. So under Chapter 97, the City Council amended that to create a eligible cannabis facility and a designated smoking area for cannabis. And the kind of impetus behind that was that there's very limited legal places in which that can occur. And so since we do have legal cannabis in California, we want to make sure that there were safe, places that people could go if they don't have the option of doing it at home or they're on vacation. They could go to a place that's safe, regulated, and whatnot. And so that's how we got here. But at a bigger level, like OSHA, whatnot, those things, I believe it's essentially the same sort of thing, but we're kind of on the cutting edge of regulations.
On page 2, last sentence of the last full paragraph, a copy of the city's required policies for on-site consumption of cannabis are included as attachment 2. That was not in my packet.
Okay. I do have a copy here, if you'd wish to take a look. It's been attached, and it's been a regular feature.
Yeah. Do you have a copy?
I do on me.
I would love to see one. I don't know
Yeah.
if anybody else would.
Okay.
Didn't we already approve them for on-premise smoking? Is it now because they're going to do it
No, we have not. So they've only had the retail, and then City Council approved them to apply for on-site consumption. And now this is the follow-up to that. This is them actually applying for the modification to their use permit.
And the on-site consumption is only happening at 300 F Street?
That's their plan. However, under the use permit, it could be in either suite.
Any other questions while I'm reviewing this? So, I know I've seen this before, but I've slept a couple times since then. One presumes that there are written protocols regarding how to assist incapacitated or overly intoxicated patrons who have consumed too much cannabis.
And so things like that are what we're looking for them to provide to us, how they intend to do it.
Right.
So EcoCan has provided some narrative of what they intend to put into place. I haven't talked to Mr. Markland about it yet, but I'm probably going to ask him if I can come over with the police captain later this week to discuss that in more detail before we get as far as actually opening anything.
And are those on file? Are those on file with us?
So that goes into the licensing documentation. So, you have a use permit and then you have a license, and you need both in order to do anything. And so that's part of what they submit to us for cannabis, a commercial cannabis license.
And so if a member of the public were interested in that, is that reviewable? Is that a public document?
I don't know what the city attorney's office would release in that regard. Certain things are, they're trade secrets or whatnot, so I don't know how they would redact that, or if they would.
I could add to your confusion. In my discussion with the applicant, they are well on top of what would happen to overindulgence. And they have methods and ways to prevent that. So they've already been a step ahead of you.
That doesn't surprise, most people are, yeah, I know.
This is very interesting.
All right. Excellent. I knew there was stuff in there. Thanks for giving me the time to review that real quickly. Any other questions for staff? As I review my notes for any other. All right. So without objection, we can open up a public hearing. We need to do a public hearing first. So our custom is to allow the applicant to go first. We have a 3-minute limit. Let me warn you, the yellow light will come on. That's your 30-second warning. Feel free to keep talking through that, baby. And then anyone that would like to speak on this issue can come up afterwards. And we just ask that you'd state your name and city of residence so that we know you're not a robot. You're a real, live Eureka City resident.
Hello and good evening, Commissioners. My name is Raymond Markland. I'm a resident of the City of Eureka, and also the applicant for on-site consumption for 300 F Street in Eureka. We're also the operator of EcoCan Dispensary at 306 F Street. Just for clarification, we do not intend to allow on-site consumption at the 306 location. It'd be a dramatic HVAC renovation and pretty long closure, I think, of the retail space. The primary purpose of this application is for separate space on-site consumption at the 300 F Street location. Some of the things just for us to kind of go over, when looking at the city's requirements, we went to lounges in San Francisco, LA, talked with city officials in San Francisco and LA, and also talked to business managers and owners of consumption lounges to kind of discuss some of the issues that they experienced either with community, government, or customers. Likewise, we went over issues of filtration, odor control, noise control, how to deal with disorderly customers, all those kind of things. Safe consumption of products within a workplace, how the state allows for handling that, and what specific OSHA ordinances are referenceable for on-site consumption. So we feel very confident that we could kind of lead the charge for City of Eureka with on-site consumption in a very respectful and professional way. Primary purpose of the lounge, interestingly enough, isn't driven by financial gain. Lounges are notoriously not a large income producer. They're more of a safe space for tourists to come and actually have an area to consume and not worry about where do we consume. After having almost 3 years under our belts, we had a couple summers of very confused tourists leaving without a purchase because they can't consume in a hotel, they can't consume in a car, public place, street, sidewalk, beach, and they don't want to consume and then wonder how to get back from the beach. So, and that's kind of the same sentiment that we got from other cannabis operators who have been permitted throughout the state, that the primary people using their lounges are tourists and people who need a safe place to consume. Very easy for them to use rideshare services, Uber, Lyft, local taxis, cabs, a non-inebriated friend. But it provides a place for them to have a safe spot to consume. And just in closing, some of the things that we did is we took all of the city's requirements and we exceeded those. And that's included in all of our engineering proposals. Everything down to the micron filtration level, which is listed at 2.5. We took that all the way down to 1 micron. In terms of MERV filtration, we brought it up from 11 to 13. And in terms of air exchanges, we're going to exceed 15. The state requires 10, and that's in accordance with the city as well. So we're prepared and ready and willing to be a great example for the city of Eureka. Thank you.
Thanks for coming out and sharing. Appreciate all your efforts to be
Thank
a
you for your
responsible
time.
merchant. You bet. Would anyone else like to speak for or against this proposal? No? All right, so with that, we'll close the public hearing and close the public hearing and return the item to the commission for motion, discussion, vote.
I have a discussion that I visited 302 and 306 and 300, and they have really gone out of the way to have the smoking lounge. It's going to be a really nice place, and it's going to be, as the applicant said, it's going to draw tourists to the city of Eureka because it's going to be a nice, safe, clean place to buy a product and smoke it next door. I don't think he added, or I missed it, but you're just not going to be able to walk in off the street and bring your own and smoke it in there. You have to buy it next door, and going from next door, from the retail shop to the smoking lounge, there's going to be a guard, and he's going to check that you bought it there. So all the product is going to be a legal product, no black market product. I think this is one of the finest applications I've seen that is going to enhance downtown Eureka and bring tourists to the area. So I'm very much in favor of it, and I'll make a motion if no one else wants to speak first.
Go ahead.
I move the Planning Commission adopt a resolution and Planning Commission of the City of Eureka approving with conditions the modification of use permit C 170002 to allow on-site consumption of cannabis at both 300 and 306 F Street, aka 410 3rd Street, APN 001095002. I did that with my eyes closed.
Have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
And then I'm assuming that the conditions modify the time, remove our 9 o'clock restraint.
Correct. So this one, the operation will comply with the state's regulations on operating hours, so that'll supersede.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. There's a motion and a second. Any other discussion on this item? I feel like I have to make an annual, just reminder. I have a background in foster care, and we've taken foster children into our home. I have 8 children. 4 of them are mine because at some level or another, someone couldn't handle the marijuana. And while I am personally opposed to the consumption of marijuana, I recognize that the law is the law, and I commend EcoCan for embracing that and for going above and beyond that. And so I will be voting for this because it is the law and the law's been met, despite my personal feelings about it. So with that, can we have let's just do a roll call vote.
Commissioner Ames,
Yes.
Commissioner Mayer,
Yes.
and Commissioner Reagan.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
All right, motion passes unanimously. Next item on our agenda, thank you guys, appreciate it. Next item on our agenda is California Packaging Company Cannabis Retail Conditional Use Permit. If we can begin with a staff report there.
All right, so this is California Packaging Company. This is a conditional use permit. This is a brand new use permit, not a modification, at 238 West Grant.
Wait a second. It's not a what?
It's not a modification, just it's parts of it are similar to the one that just went previously. I just want to make sure we understand the differences. So for reference, this is 238 West Grant. It's about a block off of Broadway. And again, here's the building itself. And you'll notice it's kind of a transitional area. So we have Broadway, we have, automotive focused uses, and then we have multifamily, single family homes, things like that as we go, that would be east. Zooming in, so it's a 2-story mixed use building. And all the cannabis related not industrial, but commercial uses are on the bottom floor. There's residential units on top. So the applicant is proposing an off-site cannabis retail facility, and so a reminder on off-site, that's about where it's consumed. So that would mean, in this context, that it could be dispensary style sales, or it could be delivery. There's no on-site consumption associated with this. And then retail activities would be on the within the existing structure on the parcel and limited to the first floor. And so just for reference again, so that's in green is kind of the space of the building that we're talking about. And I guess while we're talking about it, so the actual way the space is built, it's probably going to be that corner. So I walked that building very recently with the police department and the fire department just to have a chat with the applicant. And there's kind of office space up front that's set up for it. So in terms of site context, so the applicant already holds a valid City of Eureka license for distribution. That's principally permitted. There's a minor use permit to allow limited non-volatile manufacturing that was approved last year. That use is not yet operational. The applicant was invited to apply for a retail cannabis license by the City Council in 2019. They were in phase 2 of our RFP, so for a reminder on that, so phase 1 was able to apply last year starting in June. Phase 2 was able to start applying in January. And then the applicant was denied a conditional use permit for cultivation at his location by the Planning Commission back in 2017. In regards to zoning, we talked about this briefly, I believe, but they're in a service commercial zone district. And again, they're in that kind of transitional area between service commercial and more residential uses. In regards to findings, staff finds that as condition, this use is compatible with surrounding uses. It's consistent with the existing plans adopted by the city. It meets our development standards and would not be a threat to public health or safety. This one, again, some notable conditions of approval. There is a required parking area that is inside this building. And so that was set in a use permit earlier, the minor use permit for manufacturing. We basically replicated that in case they decided to go all retail and no manufacturing or something like that. They still need to hold up that parking area inside the building. And then they're not allowed to operate with the overhead doors open, with the exception if they have to move in a vehicle or product. And so the staff recommendation on this particular item is to approve with conditions. The use permit allowing off-site cannabis retail on the first floor at 238 West Grant Street. Again, I've provided a motion if you care to use it. I'm available for questions, and that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions for staff on this one?
Yes, could you go back to the, where the Planning Commission didn't approve a condition in 2017?
Correct. So they came before you for
I
a...
remember I visited this property and we approved.
I think you might be mixing it up with their distribution license, which is principally permitted. So that one did not come before you because it didn't have to. So they did get a distribution up and going. It had a kind of like a canning packaging. Yes. Yeah, and so that's a principally permitted use in the zone district.
So what did we?
It was cultivation.
Oh, we said we couldn't grow there. And
Correct.
They were going to divide it into threes, as I remember.
There's 3 sections to that building down there, and it's been a while since I listened. I wasn't at that meeting, but I've listened to it. And when we did the minor use permit for non-volatile manufacturing, a lot of the conditions of approval there were inspired by the conversation you had here in 2017 to make sure that we address that.
Now, just retail.
So it'd be when fully, if everything were approved, they'd have distribution, non-volatile manufacturing, and for them it's just filling of cartridges, so they're not extracting or anything there, and retail. And their plan for retail is mainly focused on delivery in a appointment-based sort of system. But that said, that's just them as an applicant. If someone else in the future were to operate this as a retail shop, they would obviously operate it in a different fashion. So we got to kind of look at it as more holistically as a use.
Is the applicant in the office audience?
I don't believe so. I see a neighbor, but I don't see the
So are they
applicant.
gonna do-
Oh, okay. Well, there we go. We have someone related to the
applicant
applicant.
is represented. Way to go, Mom. Before we address you, any other questions for staff?
I'm still talking.
Mhm.
Are they good, and then non-volatiles, are they gonna do gummies or, oils for?
So what they've applied for is basically using a cartridge filling machine. So they would purchase distillate or other product from a different entity and then fill the cartridges to be packaged and sold.
Cartridges are rolled?
No. It's like like you see those vape pens that people use. It's what goes into one of those devices. So it has an oil and it's heated and turns into vapor.
Well, I'd have to go to staff to know what they're talking about. No, thank you.
Yep.
I just have a question about the parking. You said that parking is that intended to be used for customers, like patrons?
No. That should be for the business itself. So there's, I don't have the number straight in my head, but I believe there's maybe 4 to 6 spaces on the outside of the building, along the alley. But then for development standard purposes, they needed, I believe, at least one additional space. And so that space is used inside the building. Basically covered parking like if it was a
And I thought
garage.
we had that same question last time, and there is parking in the alley, but it's, there are spaces, but it's in the alley.
Yeah, or we see that level of things. I'm just curious how that was supposed to work for every
Yeah.
for listeners.
Are those the current development standards as well? I know we've had a big change recently.
You know, so that was under the previous, when a lot of that was done, I believe. I don't know that they would need as many spaces under the current one.
Is there
I don't
any
know.
good reason that we couldn't remove that requirement and give them some more flexibility?
I don't see why not. You know, I think there's, you might hear comments about it from the public as regard to parking spaces, but, you know, and don't forget there are residential uses upstairs.
Right.
You know, so they have those uses and then their business uses, and it's a pretty dense neighborhood, so.
But the development standards for commercial service don't require businesses to have indoor parking spaces, now covered parking spaces.
That's correct, yeah. So we don't require covered parking spaces specifically, but in this case, we did on a case-by-case kind of basis.
And if they wanted to maintain that and use it, they could. Obviously, we're not saying they can't use it.
Correct, yeah.
But-
And those covered parking spaces were not for the residential use.
Right. Okay. Any other questions for staff?
To be clear, you're saying there's residences upstairs, so we're only giving a use permit for the bottom floor?
Correct. So we're in the motion that's provided here. We're setting this to the first floor. So if they wanted to redevelop this whole entire building and take out the residential uses and do that, they would come back for a modification from the commission.
Does the applicant own the building?
I don't know if they own the building. They do lease the entire bottom floor. Perhaps the applicant's representative could give you a better answer than I could. I don't know the full partnership structure there.
I'm just curious, you know, we've come across this before that people get these use permits and don't actually understand what they're doing and then feel like they, you know, just come up with that they own that permit and then come to find out it's actually that belongs to the building owner, right? Is that?
Yeah, it runs with the land. Yeah.
So I just know it's been an issue before, I'm just wondering.
Yeah, and that's why we, a lot of times in our analysis, we kind of do a more generic analysis sometimes where it could be any business. So the name of the applicant is on the application, obviously, but once it's in and it's vested, it could be any other operator that gets a cannabis license and the owner of the building wants to lease it to.
You have seen the video from that meeting in 2017 where the on-site growing operation was declined. Could you remember it well enough to refresh my memory why we, as planning commission, declined? I remember the meeting. I remember it being declined, but I don't remember why.
I don't want to venture too far out there, but I believe it was largely based on proximity to residential uses, concern about parking, and perhaps odor control. But I'm
I was
I'm
thinking
speculating a little
odor
bit here now.
control and
Yeah.
residential uses is what I remember.
It
All right.
was the resident next door complained about, or he was apprehensive about odor control.
And no complaints about that on that site.
So in regards to the gentleman you're speaking to, he is available if you'd like to speak to him. He's here in the audience. The
But
neighbor,
in terms
yes.
in terms of the city, we haven't had any reports. Have we had any reports about odor control issues?
We
in the
haven't
neighborhood?
received any to code enforcement specifically. Speaking with the neighbor, he has mentioned some instances in which he's had an issue, but I haven't had a report that I could go down and directly substantiate.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for staff before we open up a public hearing? All right, so we'll open up a public hearing. I don't know if you were here before, but it's our custom to let the applicant speak first, got a 3-minute limit, and then after that, we'll open it up to anyone else with a 3-minute limit. And the yellow light is your 30-second warning. You can talk through that all the way to the red one. Would the applicant's representative like to speak? No. Okay, that's fine. Anyone else? Anyone else? Just remind you, if you would, state your name and city of residence, just so we have that for the record.
Ron Alexander.
Say that again. I had the button off.
Sorry, Ron Alexander,
Hi, Ron.
property owner at 226 West Grant, directly adjoining on the right-hand side.
All right.
Do you mind if we pull back up from the text side the map? Thank you. There we go. Can we pan out just a whisper? Okay, the one before it, did it go all, there we go. If you look just in this, basically a 6-block stretch between the old OH's townhouse and the Broadway Theater, 6-block stretch, 5 physical locations of similar usage within that area. Of all of those that we're speaking of in that down Summer Street, hanging over to OH's and such, of all those locations, the parking for all of them is adequate and appropriate. However, if we can pull back tight in on the physical.
Say adequately inappropriate?
Adequate and appropriate.
Inappropriate, thank you.
It's like Iowa. There's more space in the OH parking lot than anybody could deem, necessary. They've got acres to spare. If you pull in tight on that one, there are 4 physical parking locations on the back, one ADA location. I believe the interior one was requested at the time based on the land use and the square footage and the apartment, 2 apartment units upstairs, which are currently still in use. Parking's tight in that area. If you pull in just a whisper tighter, that's my old Ford 250 pickup truck, the brown one, sitting there at the property line. Hubbard's German Motors is directly across the street. It's a tight spot. Summer is awfully quick. Folks drive down there awfully fast. There isn't a wide, parking area available for folks. It's a tight concern to have even appointment-based, retail in that area. Folks have, had issues with parking for quite a while, even if the space is vacant, from the retail side. Parking's been an issue historically going back many years, just with the on-site operations as it stands. As they move, historically the ADA parking in the back has been filled with just the workers. Lots of, coming and going and such. They need to fill the space just with their own people. So moving forward, if it became an actual retail location, that ADA site would need to be sequestered all the time. Pushes more folks out onto the street. The alley is a working alley. Folks aren't going to be able to just fill that space exclusively on the side. Summer is busy. West Grant is full. So it's just there's a lot of other similar locations nearby with a lot of parking. This space really doesn't have it, and they seem to be doing okay with where they're at. And my time is done.
All right.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks for coming down, Sharon. Anyone else like to share some thoughts on this particular item? Oh, going once, twice, gone. We'll return the item back to the commission for discussion, motion, and a vote.
Parking is not required by law,
No.
by our new zoning code.
The parking that they have right now is sufficient for what we need under the code.
I'd like to,
Okay.
I'd like to have a night on the council, on the planning commission, which I've never had, where I approve everything that comes up before the planning commission tonight. So I'm going to make a motion.
Okay.
If you'd put it up, please. I move that the planning commission adopt a resolution of the planning commission of the city of Eureka approving a conditional use permit CUP 20-0001, allowing off-site cannabis retail sale on the first floor at 238 West Grant Street, APN 004 02012 009. I just about made it.
Okay. That work? Would you like to second that, Ms. Meyer?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, I saw you reaching for your mic. I was curious. Any discussion on that particular item? As it's proposed, it would keep the parking space requirement in the building.
I feel bad, I hear his concerns,
Mhm.
but I don't think that's within our jurisdiction to be parking enforcement. I could be wrong.
Well, and I was thinking about maybe proposing to remove the parking requirement, but if the neighborhood's crowded, I think leaving it there is fine. Any other thoughts, comments? Discussion? If we can have a roll call vote real quick, Miss Jessica. We want to get Rich's vote specifically recorded individually.
I'm not going to ask him first because he complains we do everything in order.
Okay,
so.
yeah, mixed up.
Commissioner Mayer,
Yes.
Commissioner Ames,
Yes.
and Commissioner Reagan.
Yes.
Thank you,
Motion carries 3-0 unanimous. All right. Old business, 2020 draft bylaws. That's the next item on our agenda.
So as has become our practice, in January of each year, I bring forward to you an update of the bylaws. They are a snapshot picture in time of exactly what the department looks like, who the mayor and the council are, what our department is called, at the time that I present these to you. They were on the agenda for the January meeting. They were tabled to the next meeting. There were some concerns about adding in the Public Works part of our interim department name. So other than that, the changes that are proposed basically are just to kind of remove references to Director of Development Services and make it a little more generic for director. So whoever the director is and whatever title they have, it fits that a little bit better. I corrected the order of business on the agenda to make it match what you've been doing. And other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
Any questions? I'm glad that Rich does not have as a personal goal a meeting where I ask no questions, because he might die unfulfulfilled man if that were the case. Because you scared me there, Kristen.
Well, no, because no one.
Wait, I'm in the middle of asking a question, Rob.
No
I mean,
one
Rich.
can ask as many questions as you do, so I just let it go.
So why would we want to add Public Works if that's a temporary interim thing? Because we don't really have any oversight for Public Works. That's not in our bailiwick.
Actually, the Development Services Department is currently under the Public Works Department.
When did that happen?
In October of last year. After Rob left, we were temporarily put under the Finance Department for about 4 weeks. And then the previous city manager kind of reorganized us again and temporarily put us under Public Works. So the current Director of Public Works is our interim director. And at this point in time, we are part of Public Works, just like building is part of Public Works, engineering is part of Public Works. And as far as I know, we're going to remain that way until the current city manager decides what he's going to do with us.
I would think, I mean, let me know if I'm asking questions that have no answer, but I would think that would be some kind of code or charter, some kind of there would have to be some kind of official action to rearrange city government.
There would be. The city council would, the city manager would take something to the city council and
Right.
have them
Okay.
approve whatever it was that he was proposing. That just hasn't happened yet. He's still in his review and oversee and,
So it's all under interim now.
correct.
Yeah. I'm trying, I don't know that I understand the logic of rearranging our bylaws and rules of procedure on an interim basis to reflect interim change, and moving the Development Service Department under Public Works seems like a pretty dramatic kind of movement just for an interim thing, but.
So again, this is just a snapshot.
Right.
This is what it was in January, it's what it is in March. If the commission really has an objection to having Public Works on the front of the page, on the first page, there's nothing that says it has to be there.
On page 9, on the order of business, we scratched public comment, went just to oral communications. Is that just is that a functional change, or is that just a tell me, what's that change about?
So it just matches the way that we've been doing the agenda for the last at least year. We call that oral communications instead of public comment. Oftentimes there is confusion between public hearing and public comment, public testimony. So I think oral communications is a great way or a great thing to title that on your agenda so that people don't think, or hopefully don't think, that they're giving testimony during that time.
Right. But that will remain an opportunity for the public to address us about the oral communications is universal.
Absolutely.
Just wanted to confirm that. On page 10, I'm a little concerned, one of our guests did today, gave us full address, but on paragraph 7, each person who speaks to the commission at a planning commission meeting shall be requested but not required to furnish his or her name and address to the commission. I don't know that, I feel uncomfortable requesting anyone give us an address. A city of residence is personally fine, but if someone doesn't want to give their specific address, that seems reasonable to me. Is there a reason we couldn't change that?
Nope, it's just the language that's been in here forever.
Yep. Is there any objection to changing address in paragraph 7 to city of residence?
What are you saying there? Please, tell me again, please.
So when people come up to give testimony,
Right.
we ask them to give their name, and I've always thought, we've always asked them to give their city of residence. I didn't realize it even said address in there. But, for example, it would be, instead of me coming up and saying, my name's Jeff Reagan and I live at 123 Main Street in Eureka, I could just say, I'm Jeff Reagan and I live in the city of Eureka. Some people might feel uncomfortable given their specific property address. Imagine how you'd feel, Rich, given your address, your specific address to all those people that would want your autograph and want to touch you and
There are
stuff.
quite a few.
I know.
I'll tell you something that we just encountered on the Trellis Committee for the county of Humboldt. The lawyer for the county said that we could not ask for the address because it's all public information. When a gentleman or lady comes in and gives a speech, a talk here, that goes on the record, and so then anyone can say, I'd like to see that record, and then you get their address. So the Humboldt County said you have to redact all addresses. We just did that on the Trellis Committee.
So are you comfortable with changing address to city of residence?
Yeah, sure. Because I think it's not,
Okay.
I think someone's going to say it's not legal.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions about these bylaws? I will move to approve them with the one change of, instead of requesting an address, we request a city of residence. Well, there you go. Would you like, let's open up a public hearing then.
No,
And
public comment, please.
public comment. Open up a public comment. Would you guys like to comment publicly on our bylaws? You sure?
And if you came up, you wouldn't have to tell us where you live.
All right, so we'll close public comment, and I'll move to approve them with that one change.
Second.
Any discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. And the ayes have it. All
Thank
right, so
you.
those are approved.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is reports.
No, I'm still on old business.
Oh, okay.
When are we going to do an election of officers?
Great question. It's not on the agenda this time, so we can't do it. So next month, it should be on the agenda.
Well, we tried to do it once before when you were not here, which I voted to,
That was your chance. You missed it.
and the other commissioners took pity and said, no, let's get everyone here before we vote.
Yeah.
But I'm very happy with the way we're operating, but I just think that we keep overlooking it.
So it should be on the agenda next time.
Correct. It was on your January agenda, and it was tabled until we had a full commission. It was my error that it was not on the agenda for this evening's meeting. However, we don't have a full commission again tonight, so I will make sure that it is on the April meeting.
Or we could put it, say, the first time we have 5 members here all at once.
Let's aim for next month, and if that doesn't happen, then we can.
Decide then.
Maybe if you put on the agenda that we're going to vote on new people, or going to vote, excuse me, not new, excuse me, I didn't say. You're going to vote on election of officers, everyone will show up.
Anybody?
Look at that, Jeff, right?
Or what you could do is you could say, we're going to have election of officers. Those that don't show up will be automatically voted into office. That might work. Reports and communications. Any reports or communications?
I have nothing.
I have a question. Cell tower, the cell antenna on the water towers. As if I recall, someone asked me about that today. If I recall, City Council approved the zoning portion of it, but wanted to renegotiate the lease. Is that correct?
Yes, and the last that I had heard, and I have not checked on it recently, they were in negotiations on a revised lease.
All right, any other?
And in fact, they have submitted a building permit application.
Okay.
Because I've seen that.
Okay.
I was involved in that a lot, and you can't find any information because they're in negotiations. That's where we are in it. Because I go and say, I would like to know what's happening, because if it's another terrible lease, I'm going to raise heck again. So why can't we prevent that by letting you know what's going on? And they say, we can't let you know what's going on because we're in negotiations. So that's where we are.
All right. Any other reports or communications? Because the next item is adjournment. Any objections to adjournment?
I like to move to adjourn.
Anyone opposed? So be it. All right. Why is there a chair in the middle of the well out there?